Hello, everybody. How's it going? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. You'll notice that it is just me at the moment. Ryan is running a little bit behind. There is some family stuff come up. No worries. We'll get started here in just a little bit. But I'm super excited to have you all. I really am. Whether you're watching this live or team replay, it's going to be a really cool show. To get started, however, though, let's talk about what the show is all about. If you're just joining us for the first time, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Ryan and I started this show a couple years ago, Kessel Chat, all about Star Wars, if you hadn't guessed. But specifically, we love storytelling. The stories are what makes Star Wars so much fun, so exciting, all of that. And so for us, we really wanted to focus on a show that's centered around the important things about Star Wars and the storytelling in Star Wars that make it what we love and how our emotions connect to it. So the Kessel Chat is all about stories. There's a lot of great content out there that is all sort of the lore master type. They make lots of video channels, lots of podcasts. They all do a phenomenal job with that. That's not what Ryan and I are here for. We're here to talk to you about how this works and the symbolism and how that symbolism in modern mythology connect us as people, like why those stories matter. And so today it leads us into something we all know and love. Grab it. Lightsabers. I have two of them. Some of you have probably many more of that. We love lightsabers. Oh, I am not in focus. I'm sorry about that. We love lightsabers, right? They're fun. You can spin them. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with them. However, have you ever really stopped to think why the lightsaber? The simple answer on the surface would feel like, well, it's because samurai used them. And George Lucas was heavily inspired by, Kurosawa films and the samurai culture and mythology and all of Japanese history. And you'd be right. Like, that is very true. All those elements are completely true. Today, what we want to talk about, though, is really to dive in, however, to not just I don't want to call it superficial, but the surface of it's a weapon. These knights leverage a weapon in these powerful ways. But why is that element such an important thing to convey the story of Star Wars? So when Ryan gets here, we're going to really dive in because Ryan's got a lot more experience in English literature than I do and can really dive into this. I kind of wish Joanna was here with us today because we're going to hopefully get into some mythological discussions too. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Ryan to get here, if you wouldn't mind, give us a follow. We're on all the socials. We're here on YouTube. You can find us. We're on Twitch if you're catching us there. You could be watching us on LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter. Just give us a follow. We'd love that. Jump into the comments. Ask your questions. Provide commentary. Community is what matters. So, all right. Why don't we talk about it? So, in the classical sense, there is, in the hero's journey, let me pull up my notes here real quick because there were some things I wanted to make sure to touch on with all of you. In a hero's journey, one of the core elements of the hero going through their process of, not really the hero, but the person going through a process of, becoming the hero, so to speak, is their initiation to a larger world. In the case of Star Wars, Luke's part of the journey here is that Luke is being introduced to the world, and by world I mean the larger galaxy around him that he was never aware of. He's heard about and kind of sees from the ground, sort of like Rey on Jakku and the memory of seeing her the ship fly away to her parents, leaving her behind. But with Luke, it's a more metaphorical. Although he does say, "I just want to get out of here, Biggs. I want to go someplace else." But he doesn't really know where he's going to go. He doesn't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll go to the Imperial Academy. Maybe he'll do something else. And in the story of Luke, the lightsaber is Luke's first real introduction, tangible introduction to the world of Jedi and the Force. Now, of course, you could argue that meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi, yes, but he's a person and Luke knows him for something else. But to have the lightsaber in his hand, to hold something, not just a story from an old man potentially, but something tangible that he could ignite and hold and realize that, oh my gosh, these stories might actually be very, very true. That's an important part of his own personal journey. It becomes a symbol of him as sort of a mystic warrior, which is a tradition that he's about to enter, whether that's the tradition of the Jedi. It's also a tradition within mythology. We have various Greek and Roman gods or Roman half gods and deities acquiring their own versions of a lightsaber, their own swords, and things of that nature that advance their story, and it has a meaning behind it. It's receiving that as a gift or being introduced to that opens up this world around them, and then they get to make a different set of choices as a character about how they help people or not, how they interact with the gods of the world or not, things like that. So make sure my audio is working here. It didn't look like it wasn't. Secondly, another thing that is really interesting about this is it's a link to the past. So it's pretty obvious, when we hear from Obi-Wan that 10,000 Jedi Knights once, protected the galaxy, and now that we have the High Republic, which you can see here off to my right, in the High Republic, here it's a good example because I always love showing comic books. High Republic stuff, it's not focusing, but High Republic. Here he comes. Here he comes. All right. That is not Ryan's camera. Hold on. Wait for it. There we go. There's Ryan. Ryan, you there?
I am here.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. I'm enjoying a nice Friday. It's been a busy week. But yeah, how about you, my friend? How are you doing?
I'm really good. I had to kind of kick things off a little bit, started talking about some stuff, and I'm really glad you're here because this is going to make it even more enjoyable. You've got a lot more background in literature than I do, so we can really dive into it with you. But yeah, no, it's been a good week. I've been working on my cosplay. I'll be flying to Denver next Wednesday. The family and I go to Denver for a few days, just get out of town. Sorry, put my headphones on here, so hopefully there's no more echo. And we get out of town for a few days, and it just happened to be that an event called Fan Expo is happening in Denver next weekend for 3 days, which is a pretty large series of Comic-Cons. And so we bought tickets for next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, to go to that. And I'm bringing all of my cosplay stuff with me. So I've been feverishly printing out 3D prints of armor for my Jedi robes. So I was in the garage this afternoon taping and things like that to get them spray painted. So I got the arm pieces and the hand armor, and I'm considering bringing my actual lightsaber with me, but I'm like, then I have to carry it around the whole conference the whole day, and it's a lot. So I was like, maybe if I just, I don't know, 3D printed a handle or a hilt that I could carry around and like just have that like in a holster that would be a good look. And sure enough, I found Stellan Geos from the High Republic. I found his lightsaber on thingiverse.com to print. I'm like, this is fantastic. It's a very tall hilt with like cross guards that fold out, and it's really cool. But it's like 37 pieces. It's a ton of little tiny pieces that have to all be glued together and painted differently. It's gonna look rad, but for the last week, like every day, I've been running 2 to 3 different 3D prints. My printer's like been nonstop running for the last like week, and I'm still not done with all the prints. I still have like, I think 5 more things I've got to print. So I bought a bunch of spray paint today so I can actually start spray painting all the parts, so I can actually start getting them glued together and know what I'm left with. But yeah, that's been my week.
Oh wow, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm like super impressed that you've got so much going on. Like one, kudos always like are always doing the work that goes into like coming up with solid cosplay. I will say this. I'm getting ready. We have a couple of cons that we're going to be going to. I'm potentially going to be at the Las Vegas. There's a one in Las Vegas. It's like a World Con that's
cool.
at the start of August. Right now, my wife and I are looking at that as a possible thing to go to. And then I kind of like went down a rabbit hole of stuff that I could make, like you, and then stuff that I could buy. And a thing that I've been after for some time has been the
robes,
the orange jumpsuit. Oh no, the orange jumpsuit of Luke Skywalker.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, pilot. And considering I have my cameo from Snap Wexley, and Snap Wexley has a beard, I thought I might pull off some type of Snap Wexley Greg Grunberg homage, and then send that his way. But yeah, like I'm really excited for this summer just because there's so many like cool things to go to.
Yeah,
But good on you, man. Like that sounds like an awesome trip.
it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be super fun. I'm very excited. And let's use that as a tangent because I was talking a bit about lightsabers. I messaged you earlier
Mhm.
about what our topic would be today, and I started kind of getting into it a little bit. But I want to ask you. Let's start with this. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I thought I had a little one coming in the shed. Let's start here. Why lightsabers? Like, so I was talking about earlier that obviously there's a lot of connection to samurai culture, Japanese culture, but the
Yep.
samurai
Yep.
and feudal Japan and the mythology behind the samurai because they weren't just plate armored warriors, which they were. It's a full plate armor that they're wearing, looks different and more ceremonial in some degree than European plate armor, but just as functional. So yes, there's that aspect of it. But there's also a massive
Yeah.
symbolism aspect to this as well. And so I thought what would be interesting is to stop, like, for in your mind as a starting point, why the lightsaber as opposed to
Oh,
anything
this is
else?
a great topic. Yeah, man, this is a great topic. And I hope that my audio is now in sync with my video for a while.
It's
Okay,
close enough.
awesome.
I think it's close enough.
So, okay, perfect. So the thing that is cool is okay, iTunes just recently had a really big sale on a lot of their movies. And just as a heads up, I have a problem. I buy way too many movies. I have over 750 iTunes movies. It's
Wow.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's a problem. I am going to be writing a review on all 750 of them. I am going to start at the A's and go all the way through to the numbers, which I think my last movie that's on the list is the 400 Blows. Or no, it's 2010, the year we made contact. That's the last one on the list. And so I'm going to review all of these movies. But I am a passionate, like, I love movies. And when that sale went down, they had great movies that were $2. Um, one of them was a movie that with a star that George Lucas loved when he was growing up, and that is actually there were two of them: Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and Captain Blood with Errol Flynn. And those movies had such a massive impact for a generation of actors, writers, and directors. And a big part of those movies was they were swashbuckling movies, and they were movies that had these elaborate sword battles, right? Especially Robin Hood. When Robin Hood fights Guy of Gisborne at the end of Robin Hood, it is you will see shot for shot remakes of what that is in Return of the Jedi. The camera that's overhead of Luke and Darth Vader when they're fighting in front of the Emperor, that is all from Robin Hood, from the 1930, I think it's like 1933 Robin Hood. Watch it; it's colorized. It's actually really cool. And Errol Flynn is great in it. He is this really like almost Han Solo-ish character, but he is really enjoying himself when he's, oh, going ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say sorry. I unmute myself. Thank you for reminding me. So what's interesting about what you just described, if we're talking like just trivia facts for a minute, the person who trained Errol Flynn in that movie also trained
Rob Anderson.
the actors on Return of the Jedi, and also trained many of the actors for a big chunk of time in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings. This is before he passed away. His name is Bob Anderson, a very
That's right.
very well known fencer who was world renowned not just for his fencing but his ability to teach actors how to take real fencing techniques and put them onto the screen in a way that would be he wasn't trying to make them convincing as real fencing or real sword fighting. He was trying to make it convincing as in if you're going to make this fantastical and over the top so it appealed really nicely in cinema, how could you do it in a way that still used real film scene elements to it? Which, to your point, is why that scene in Return of the Jedi looks so similar to, if not identical to, the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, as well as a lot of the sword fighting and techniques and stuff used in Lord of the Rings. Bob Anderson was on the set for all the filming of that and was training Viggo Mortensen and others how to. I think Viggo actually carried his sword with him
Yes, that's
everywhere he
correct.
went. Like he took it with him to restaurants, he took it with him to doctor's appointments, and he joked about it. And they even they joked that he kind of overdid it a little bit. But he's like, no, I wanted this to feel like when I used it on the set in battles that this was like a warrior would actually have this thing with. They would never just leave it at home. It would be a part of. It'd be a tool. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that you're absolutely right. And so Bob Anderson was the guy. He was the on-set coordinator for a lot of those fight scenes. And so when this is why I hired when Return of the Jedi is coming out, when Empire Strikes Back is coming out. And although they like to keep the myth of David Prowse shot all of the scenes as Darth Vader, in fact, in Return of the Jedi, that was in that fight scene. That's actually Bob Anderson,
It is.
and
Yep.
so that's actually a really big part of that mythos. So when you're talking about like why lightsabers, Star Wars is a collection of all of these 1930s movies that really defined, like I said, a generation of filmmakers. And even like Samuel L. Jackson said, well, I want to be in Star Wars. These are our modern day swashbuckling movies. And if you remember Goonies, when Chunk and Sloth they put the knife inside of the sail and slide down it. That's from Captain Blood. These are so important to these filmmakers, and that's because they grew up with them, and so that's why you see the Wizard of Oz. That's why you see all these things inside of Star Wars. What is important about it being swords? Like it's silly. Like Nick, the stunt coordinator for the prequels, said, it's kind of silly that they use swords when they have laser guns. That means that the sword has to be such a powerful. These lightsabers have to be such a powerful weapon for the. That logic aside, the real reason why you give your characters swords and have them have a fight like that is to get your antagonist and your protagonist literally like 2 feet apart. And that's when they can talk to each other. That's when you have the heightened tension of them fighting. You have the ability to have drama, and you get dialogue. And that's what happens in those early Errol Flynn movies. Is Errol Flynn's not just like, slashing away. They're taunting each other. They're talking to each other. They're relaying their motivations.
And in many cases, I remember specifically watching Robin Hood, and in that movie, but many other movies like that, even the Princess Bride, which was made obviously much later than Robin Hood. Even in that, a lot of the sword fighting that happens is literally a back and forth. You watch the actors, and they almost bounce like bounce, 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 bounce. And it's almost, if you know, when you finally, it's almost a glass breaking moment. When you see that happen, it's almost, now you can't not see it. And it almost becomes comical a little bit because you watch them like thrust, but as soon as one goes to thrust, the other doesn't, might parry, but parries by dancing backward and then thrusts. And they literally, it's a back and forth. Sometimes they're talking, sometimes they're just doing it, but there's always a back and forth that is occurring, whether it's the music, their physical motions, or a combination of those plus their dialogue. And it makes it, like you're describing, it makes it a really important thing for film mechanics.
Yeah, and it just it's there to help tell the story. And so yeah, like to me, having lightsabers in Star Wars is just it's a mechanism to be able to get really great story structure to come to pass. And so like just from the gosh, how to put this? Just from the tenets of I want to tell a good movie, a really good example of how that's used without swords today is there was a trend in the late 90s and early 2000s where the swords were replaced with coffee cups. And what I mean by that is that you'd have your antagonist and your protagonist meet each other oddly in a coffee shop. And the most spectacular of those meetings is a movie called Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. And again, you have your antagonist, you have your protagonist, you have your Holmes and your Moriarty. Well, they have to meet, and when they do, it's their swords are put down. Um, the then it's coffee cups instead. But again, it gives them a reason to be together. The sword fight is a reason to have these two characters be together. Whether it's Obi-Wan and Anakin. I mean, again, even in the Obi-Wan show, the recent one that they did, the what are they doing the whole time they're fighting? They're talking to each other. What are the best lines that come out of that series is when they're talking to each other in those fights. That's why that's so important to have them have this mechanism to be able to do that. Now that's like the storytelling reason, the history of why to have lightsabers for the Jedi to have lightsabers. But from a mythology region, like perspective, Jeff, that's where I think this story gets a lot more interesting. And I mean, we've talked about a lot of that stuff in the past, but um, I know that you probably have a lot of this. Like we've talked about this so much. I know that you probably have thoughts about this
Mhm.
too.
I have a couple notes though, but I want to bring
How
them
do
up
you
to
see
you to kind of
that?
like to pull them out of you a little bit. Not that you won't get there, but there's a few things I was looking up, and I created like 4 or 5 bullets that we can sort of touch on. Um, let's start with Luke's initiation into a larger world. That how the
That's the
lightsaber
talisman.
symbolizes that, and why that is such an important dynamic in not just Star Wars, but for all of us when we classical myths as well.
All heroes are given a talisman at the start of their journey that introduces them to what is either like a world of chaos
Oh,
or an
talisman. That is
underworld
the
or
word
a
I was
larger
looking
world.
for. It can be weapon, but talisman is the
Yeah,
word I was looking for.
and that's really it. Is that the talisman of the gosh, how to put this? It's like you need to give the hero a tool that they can use to defeat evil. And that's in every like that's in Greek mythology. It's sometimes a part of the journey is just to get that tool. Jeff, there's a funny movie that you might recall, and it is oh gosh, it's and of course I'm blanking on it right now. It's where he's got the glaive.
The glaive.
It's a fantasy movie, and of course it's one of these 750 movies that I own. It's here if I pull it up, I bet I could get it really quickly. Kroll.
Crawl.
Kroll.
That does sound really
Um,
familiar.
Okay, if you want to watch a fun movie that involves a talisman, that involves a princess, that involves a dark power, and a prince having to go and save the princess and save the world, it's this movie Kroll, and it's a crazy, wacky movie. But his talisman is the glaive, and it is this thing that can defeat evil until he realizes that he doesn't need it. He doesn't. The talisman is always there until the hero realizes that they're bigger than the talisman, that they actually themselves can defeat evil. That happens with Kroll. It happens with Willow. Willow's talisman is the wand of the wand of course I'm forgetting this was it's the
Tearsley, not
wand, and
Tearsley.
then
Cylindriel's wand. I think it was Cylindriel's
yes,
wand.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. It's her wand, and of course he learns to use it, and he learns to use it so that way he can defeat evil. But then in the end, he doesn't need that magic. He himself is the thing that can defeat evil.
And
Luke,
a modern,
his light,
sorry, a modern or a very recent example of this would be Thor Ragnarok. When
yeah,
Thor is talking to his dad, he's like, "Are you the god of hammers?" He's like, "What are you the
Yes.
god of?" And he realizes the hammer was just a way to channel but the power is his. He thought it was something different. His dad always gave it to him as a way to channel it, to practice channeling that.
Yes, exactly. You are absolutely right. So, the a big part of any hero's journey is the talisman, and for Luke, it's that is his initiation. He gets a lightsaber. He's being initiated into a larger world. He's being shown where he can move and be and grow. But he even gets to a point in Return of the Jedi with his he presents his new lightsaber to Darth Vader, and Darth Vader says, "Oh, you've built this lightsaber. You really are powerful now." And Luke throws the lightsaber away at the end of his fight because he doesn't need it anymore.
Right.
He himself can banish the evil. And that's a big part of the hero's story. And in all of these, whether it's ancient myth. If it's often in myths, it's a sword, and it's an heirloom. In Lord of the Rings, it's the shards of Narsil.
Right.
Are reared into Andoril. I mean, all of these things are always it is possible to be able to take the next step in their journey as a hero,
Right.
but then they realize they don't need it. Lone Star and freaking um the ring is Bubkiss. I found it in a Cracker Jack box. That's exactly what the talisman is. But it's important. It's an important symbol. And Orin and the Orin symbol in the Neverending Story. All of these heroes have a thing that helps them get that next level, but then that's not what they need anymore. They just need themselves to be able to make it to that next level, and that's what's so great about Luke with his lightsaber. And by the way, it's even with Ray. Ray has the same experience. Um, uh, yeah, even Obi-Wan. I mean, all of these people, like they all have a connection to it. That's why I thought a missed opportunity was Obi-Wan not using Qui-Gon's lightsaber in duels.
Yeah.
I would have seen that. And likewise, I always thought a really missed opportunity was that when Rey gets Anakin's lightsaber, which was used by Luke, that there was even more prominence with it. I would have loved in the prequels that, because that lightsaber looks so different than all the others, that it was some ancient lightsaber. And this is probably the next point that you have, if it was like Excalibur. Because legendary swords are always a big part of typically a hero's journey.
I agree. There's one of the other notes I want to bring up is the symbol of heroism and courage, like that
Oh
it
yeah,
is
of course.
symbolic, which is kind of what you're touching on. I What you got me thinking of just there was in the High Republic, and I know I'm a big stand for High Republic, so I always bring it up. But in the High Republic, and I'm forgetting which book it is. I think in phase 2, it's been mentioned in a few of the adult books and even some of the middle grade books, but in phase 2 and phase 1 there has been mention by some of the Jedi masters, either like in a flashback or in the current storyline, where a Padawan comes full circle in a conflict of some kind, or their own personal conflict or an actual battle or whatever it happens to be, and they hear from their master, and they've said this several times, that in the era of the High Republic, the lightsabers are largely ceremonial. At least that's how they think of them, and many people are like, yeah, then why do we carry them? Why do we have this? And it's interesting to see that still the younger people don't understand the insight that some of the older Jedi, or Jedi who've been around for a long time, see. And it's also foreshadowing a bit in my mind why the Jedi tapered off, because they're still holding information back from the younger generation, as if somehow the younger generation can't handle it or can't understand it, which is always problematic in a story. But on the positive side, what's interesting is they do mention multiple times that a Jedi doesn't need their lightsaber. It's not their power in the Force. It is who they are and how they believe the world around them should be, and their ability to decide when to take action, how to take action, when not to take action, and what type of action they should take. And the lightsaber should be the very last thing they should ever go to for any particular purpose, which is interesting in of itself. And there's one example in the story. It was in where is it? It was in Quest for the Hidden City. And this started off in this particular, which is one of the kids' books, but she popped back up in several other things. A Jedi Master named Solandra's show, and in it, she is known for carrying a shield. She carries a shield on her back, and she does have a lightsaber, but she tells her, and her Padawan knows this, and it's explained in it that she would prefer to be a shield for people and not a weapon. And so when she goes into combat or a combat-based situation, 9 times out of 10, she's just pulling her shield out and she's not igniting her lightsaber. The lightsaber for her is the absolute last resort she ignites for any particular purpose, because she sees herself as the shield for those who can't protect and fight for themselves. And I find that really interesting, because it's very similar to the lightsaber, but it is a clear decision by somebody to say, I know what, no matter what, I know what that is going to result in, and I don't want to go down that path. I'm going to make my own decision about what path I'm going to take. This is a symbol, but it's also symbolic of the decision that I've made. And I find that really fascinating as an element that they've introduced in this story that no one else has really done it. No other Jedi has done it, but she has. And I find it really fascinating because it's even one of the main antagonists in the story, as much as she's playing lip service to this Jedi, this antagonist, she does show a genuine amount of respect in a couple different points for how this Jedi Master, even though she hates Jedi, how this Jedi Master behaves and the way that she composes herself, not saying I am a shield, but in her actions and how she goes about it without minimally igniting her lightsaber, really showing that this is a decision I'm going to make in a very particular way. And even the antagonist can have respect for it, which is a fascinating part of a story, to have your one of your main antagonists like feel not positive, but less antagonistic toward the thing that they don't like.
Yeah, I think that's such a great insight for that character too. By the way, that's very Captain America. Like Captain America is the shield of liberty. Like that's where like all that shield stuff comes from for Captain America. I like that as a concept because, by the way, Jeff, there is, and I've talked about this in the past, there's a really great YouTube video, and there's 3 parts of it. But there's a really great YouTube video by Michael Beretti, who does Belated Media, and it's called "What If Episode 1 Was Good?" And but by the way, like again, I can make a case that Episode 1 is the most cinematic of the 3 prequel movies. But episode in his version of Episode 1, he actually has the dialogue when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon arrive on the Trade Federation ship.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, the beats can all still play out the same, except the conversation's different. It's in the same line, but it's Obi-Wan expressing the thing that he's obviously told not to do, which is he wants adventure, excitement. He wants these things, and he even says, "Oh, remember the Jedis of old that would have to, use their lightsabers, and the Jedis of old that would have to fight the Sith." And it's Qui-Gon that admonishes him and says, "No, that's a good thing. We don't have to deal with that anymore. That was a terrible time for us. That was a terrible time to be in the Force. Be thankful that we live in these days of peace." And that is the first lines of that movie would then set the tone for the entire prequel series. That it's people that forget the benefits of peace for war. And so the thing that happens there, I've always thought that was a better way to start it. Because again, I understand what, you got to be focused on the living force. And I know it's funny that his first line out of his mouth is, "I have a bad feeling about this." I get that. But
doesn't Qui-Gon say something like, "Control your emotions, Obi-Wan," or whatever? I forget what his exact line
bring
is.
your focus here and now where it should be. You got to be focused on the living force. And that's where I don't know, Jeff. I think that would have been a great thing to talk about, because I think that the mysticism around the lightsaber is great. Like, I would have really leaned into that. The only other conversation that we get on the lightsaber is in episode 2, when Obi-Wan holds it up and he says, "This weapon is your life." Um, that's a really interesting line to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Importance of having your lightsaber. It's then played for jokes later when it gets cut, and he's like, Obi Wan's gonna kill me. But yeah, like the lightsaber is it is all of the things that you're talking about, as far as heroism, is bravery, but anything that's in a film should be there to drive meaning for something.
Right.
And I think in the prequels they kind of lost a little bit of that. In episode in Empire Act, they don't, because Luke goes into the cave with his lightsaber and is told specifically, "Your weapons, you will not need them." Well, what's in there? Only what you take with you. And he brings the lightsaber with him, because what Luke wants more than anything is a fight. And that is
It's
that's
youthful.
a
It's like youthful angst and not knowing where to direct it. It's almost like
yes.
somebody who's upset or frustrated at something, and they laugh, and they're like, "Ah," and on the surface, you'd react. Your response is, "You're laughing at that? Oh, you must not be bothered." It's like, no, the person probably is bothered, but they can't find another way to put it out other than like hitting something you're getting mad, so they just laugh, and it's just a way to express that energy. That's what this useful exuberance that he's trying to. And the lightsaber is but I could cut the thing, right, and then it's done. I could split something and get it out of my way. And it's like, that's where Yoda, I think,
Yeah.
failed Luke in that regard. Is like, yes, he told him only what you take with you. It's like, sometimes the riddle is helpful because you need to lead someone to water and let them drink and solve that. But there are other times when you need to tell somebody something. You like, I need you to understand this, so I'm going to tell you more than that. Because, and I think that was a failing point for Yoda as a teacher in that moment. He tried too hard to make it like the Jedi of old, the Padawans of old, where you have all the time in the world and it's not a big deal. You're in a temple, and that's not what this is. And so there was almost frustration afterwards when he took the lightsaber with him, and he's like, "What did you expect him to do? Like, you can't
Mhm.
expect him to just, oh, okay, little green dude I just met. No worries, I'll just do the thing you said. It'll be totally fine."
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that it's funny, because I think he calls out and he says something like, "This place. What is this place? It's cold. I feel death." And it's a really great scene, and the lightsaber is interconnected with it. And the lightsaber is used in the original trilogy too, as a model for Luke's progression as a Jedi. When he gets it in A New Hope, he's just waving it around, like, "Ooh, look, it's colorful." And then he's using it, and he takes his first steps into the larger world while blocking the blaster bolts. But then in the next movie, he's using it more utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
He uses the lightsaber. The lightsaber's used to open up a tauntaun, like Han Solo uses it. In the same way that the tauntaun belly is split open by Han, Luke uses it to split open the belly of the AT-AT, and opens it up so that way he can throw his bomb in there. The lightsaber is just this wildly utilitarian tool for Luke. Even when he gets to Dagobah, it's like he's like, "Oh yeah, I just use this to like the same way I would use a blaster." And in fact, when he gets to Cloud City, he's still using the blaster, and only realizes what he's gotten into when he sees that he can hear Darth Vader, and he looks down at the blaster and realizes, "Oh yeah, I can't use this anymore. I have to use the lightsaber." And it becomes this, because he's using it so not as a Jedi, but just as a tool. He is separated from it so quickly
Right.
in that fight. And that's the exact opposite of what happens when he's in Return of the Jedi. He goes into Jabba's palace. He doesn't need the lightsaber, and it's only when he's going to have his whole Captain Blood, to bring it all the way back to Captain Blood, fight on the skiff is when the lightsaber presents itself, and he just starts using it like a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
He's it's deflecting the blaster bolts. Like he doesn't have another. He's not trying to use another firearm. And then even when he's on Endor, he's using the lightsaber to do all of his battles, and then throws it away when he's like, "No, I'm not going to be turned to the dark side." It's that the lightsaber is a great model for Luke's growth as a Jedi and as a hero. And yeah, I again, it's a brilliant construct in the film.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. There was one other, and you touched on it in there, that evolution of it going from a glow stick, fancy glow stick for a rave, to a tool, utilitarian on the tool belt, to him actually understanding what it is he's got in front of him. And you mentioned a separation there, it kind of alluded to. And one other point that I wanted to kind of bring up before, kind of as we wind down the topic today, is this dichotomy between light and dark. In Star Wars, it's very clearly defined as the light side and the dark side. But
That's right.
it is substantially more nuanced than that. But Lucas did a really good job, I think, of crafting a way to tell a story that says, we will present you with what you perceive as all good and all bad. It is not that. It is substantially more nuanced, which of course spins out things like the Grey Jedi, whatever else, but that's a different show. However, the idea between the lightsaber is almost like a middle between the light and the dark, and can cut between it. And not that it cuts, it's literally severs light and dark. It's that it almost the notes I kind of wrote down were, it's this contrast between Obi-Wan and Vader's use of the lightsaber further emphasizes the dichotomy between light and dark sides of the Force. It's a tool, and it reflects the nature of the one who wields it. Obi-Wan uses it in self-defense and to protect others, while Vader uses it as a weapon of fear and oppression. It can be a weapon, it can be a tool, it can be a defensive thing. It becomes almost if you're doing coding or in technology, it's almost like the pipe on your keyboard. It can be a separator between two different things. It creates this symbol of separation between one thing and another in many cases.
Yeah, I would agree. I really like how you even broke it down. How it is used says a lot about the characters, and I think that is a part of like the whole talisman component of
Mm-hmm.
it as well. Because it's the having a sword or any weapon is a power, and power is corrupting. To have power is corrupting, and that's why I always thought it was cool. Like if there's a mistake that I feel that the prequels did, it was having, and I apologize because I know that a lot of people like this, but it was having Yoda have a lightsaber. Yoda not having a lightsaber meant so much to me as someone and again, I liked it. I liked watching that little frog go like crazy. That was awesome. That was really cool. I liked the Darth Sidious fight. That was really cool. But Yoda is something that's bigger than that at that point, where Yoda's not picking up a lightsaber because that's the antithesis of who the Yoda character is.
Mm-hmm.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Like that's a big statement from Yoda, and so when the lightsaber is being used, I mean, even the way that Obi-Wan talks about it, it is it's a weapon of a more civilized age. It's something that's ancient, that's old, that used to denote a rank and a culture more than it would be used for anything else. It would be like using a lightsaber as a letter opener. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like it robs something of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I like what you're saying too about the use of it as a tool of oppression, because that's exactly how it's even being projected when it's on screen. Whenever you hear the red lightsaber, they activate differently,
Mm-hmm.
sound differently. They sound oddly more menacing. Listen to Darth Maul's red lightsaber when he flicks it the first time, and it's that deeper, darker wall. it's a more intimidating sound.
Yeah.
When Darth Vader activates his lightsaber, it's the sound. It's not the kind of classic lightsaber sound.
Right.
When his sounds like it's on fire.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It creates this. It allows you to get a better sense of who the character is and their intentions, not just by the color, but also by how it sounds, how they hold it, their stance. Um, yeah, I love this, and I'm sure there's a ton more we could get into on it, but I'm so glad
Yeah,
we got to this topic today. I was hoping to have one of our friends from other channels come in too to kind of add their elements, but maybe we come back and do that another time. I'd love to get Joanna back on the show too to talk a bit more about the mythology again, because there's a lot more I think we could dive
that'd
into.
Be great.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great. Here's the last thing that I'll say that I hope that we can see someday is I would set a future Star Wars movie like way out in the future, like go super forward, and let's say Tatooine is now covered in water.
it was. Well, okay, at least in I don't actually know if it's officially in canon, but in EU it was like originally covered in water.
Have it covered in water. It's opposite Dune. Have it covered in water and have the Excalibur moment
right?
of yes, exactly. It's Caladan. Have the opposite moment of have your Lady in the Lake moment with Excalibur, and have that lightsaber that's buried in the sand come up. Have it find a new hero. And I like the idea of it almost in the way that like a good version of the One Ring, if there is such a thing. Mm-hmm. Another really great talisman that demands so much of its bearer. I think that there's something to that being a part of the Star Wars mythos, and just some random lightsaber.
Yeah, so, I totally agree with you on that one. Totally agree. Right on, man. This has been cool. I'm glad we got to dive into this. It's awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up here in just a second, but if you haven't subscribed and all that other clicky stuff, we'll be back next week. Actually, no, we will not be back next week because I will be on vacation. I will be in Denver getting ready to go to Fan Expo, which I'm super excited about. So I've got more 3D printing stuff I'm going to go do right now.
Good deal. Well, hey, best of luck. Safe travels, my friend. And again, for everyone that's watching live or on Team Replay, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.